I remember when I first started parkour, there was like a couple women in our community, and I was like lucky to be in a community that had a lot of women, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you kind of get this early phase of, I see this like spectrum of how do you bring in a marginalized community, or spectrum of community engagement type thing. And stage one is like sort of like a denial, there's no problem. We're just looking from like a women's issues thing.
Mm-hmm.
And some folks are still in this stage of like, it's not really our focus to try to get women in parkour, or like, I'm not misogynistic, so it's not a problem, or like just sometimes in denial, or sometimes just not focusing on women's issues.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get this next stage of when you start being more accepting, you get sort of like this like stage two is like this token stage where there's like the token girl, and usually the token girl is somewhat like of a tomboy, more like and maybe mental armor towards some like misogynistic things, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just being like, don't be a pussy, and like, you know, that sort of languaging. And like, while, you know, just because you say don't be a pussy and don't be a bitch doesn't mean that you are like a deeply misogynistic person. It is,
Yeah.
it can be that that space is not welcoming for women, right? Because the underlying message is, you know, being a woman is weak.
Mm.
So you get these like very thick-skinned sort of stereotypically tomboy sort of token women that are in there. And then the next stage for there that I've seen is a stage where it's like, let's create dedicated spaces for these people. There's a want for like a women's only jam, or a women's only class, or something like that, right? And at that stage, I've definitely noticed pushback, sometimes from men being like, well, where's the men's space, right? Um, you know, or why does this need, like, just a lack of understanding
Mm-hmm.
as to why there may need to be this like safe space. um, and then sometimes also pushback from some of the like the women as well. Like, I was actually very anti women's only spaces, and like essentially gender segregation for a long time, in competition, in just jams as well. um, which also is like ironic to me now that I've come out as non-binary. But like,
Mm-hmm.
regardless, when I did actually go and attend those, I was like, oh, I understand why this exists. Because hearing so many women, like I remember going to my first ever like the North American Women's Parkour gathering, and being like, I've never seen so many women in one place, you know. And some people there were like, I've never trained with another woman, period.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like it was just mind blowing for them. It was a great experience for them. And then with competition as well, while I have complex feelings about gender in competition, um, I did feel a sense of belonging because there were challenges at my level. So yeah, like at that stage, there's pushback for building this inclusion. And then the assumption is that when you build this safe space, more people are going to join a co-ed space. And I think that is sometimes true. Like, one thing that we need to also recognize is sometimes these committed communities, like, it's okay for parkour, a women's parkour group, to be your safe haven from the misogyny you experience in the rest of your life. And you don't really want to deal with misogyny in parkour too. Like, that's okay. Some women will never join co-ed spaces.
Mm.
And I think that's a hard one for us to grapple, because I think the default idea of parkour is for everyone is like a coexisting location space for everyone.
Mm.
And that's just not the reality of life.
Yeah, it's
So,
like I mean, let me see if I can
mhm.
kind of catch on to that real quick. Are you kind of saying parkour's for everyone, but it doesn't mean everyone at the same time in the same place, in the
Totally.
same
Yeah.
rule set, in the same like culture? It's like parkour's for everyone in that we want to make it accessible for anyone and everyone to express it in whatever way makes them get the most value from it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so like, and that's, I do hope that, you know, there is, I would say, a final stage for communities where the co-ed space does really start to show up, when there is representation of female leadership,
Mm.
right? And like, and this is, you know, and like, I've attended talks at like Art of Retreat, where like some of the actions look like, you know, a website is not just a bunch of pictures of like men doing big jumps, you know. Like, maybe you have women doing big jumps, but probably more accessibly you have men and women who are doing not big things as well. Like, you got to market to the people who are going to be inspired by it. Not everybody's inspired by big jumps is the a hard pill to swallow for some people.
And by the way, the people that are inspired by big jumps, they don't need. They're gonna find the big jumps.
Totally, they're gonna find
They're
the big
out
jumps.
there.
Yeah.
You don't need
Yeah.
to take care of those guys or gals or anybody. Like, it's just
Totally.
easily. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's,
They're not the ones. Like, there's often the most spearheaded folk that really they I don't know.
and I'm here for big
That's-
jumps. Like
yeah.
I'm not even
Hey,
like, but I think
I'm
we
here
also
until my knees explode.
yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, as having one knee that has exploded.
None of my anti big jumps.
Yeah, medium-sized jumps as we get older. But yeah, like what's made Parkour Visions, like the Seattle community, I think have a lot of women's participation in co-ed spaces is there's like female coaches, and I've seen that other communities as well have been really great in doing this. Where there's female coaches, there's female leadership running the business as well. That helps break down some of those stereotypes. It can be really hard to bridge the gap from women's only spaces to more consistently co-ed spaces if it's all men making decisions, is because there's just a lack of like lived experience. There's a lot of well-intentioned men that I don't want to even say is like men can't make decisions about women, but like you just always need to bring in the stakeholders who are actually affected by policies that are being made. But I do see that sort of like spectrum of stages of like community involvement, I guess, as something that can be replicated in a variety of ways, hopefully. So
I hope so too.
yeah.